Hello everyone, Catchy13 with Catchy Gaming. And Metroid Prime 4 came out last week, and I didn't do initial impressions and just opted to finish the game. It didn't take long to do that. Twice, I might add. And I have some thoughts I've been kind of dwelling on. I wanted to start with the opening text of the game, which is where I have some of the biggest issues with the game, as well as just the overall first part of the game in general. The first bit of text covers Silux, and I'll get into him just a little bit here. What's bothering me the most is actually this second sentence coming up, where it talks about the Metroids. And for multiple reasons, this whole entire sentence is just an absolute abhorrent deviation from lore that has been established, as well as being established by the very same company that wrote this little tidbit here.
Let me explain. No, there is too much.
For those who don't know, the very first Metroid had Samus going to planet Zebes, where she followed a bunch of space pirates who took several Metroids in order to try and weaponize them in some shape or form. Yeah, I know the whole weaponizing things. I mean, I guess it works for things like dogs and stuff, and it could act in a similar manner, but they made it to be out a much bigger threat than just simply bringing them on as some kind of attack animal. And you're like, well, what's wrong with it at this point in time in terms of what they said in that little text crawl there? Let me get to it, hang on. The sequel that was put out on the Game Boy in 1991, Metroid 2, Return of Samus, which also received a remake on the 3DS back in 2017, had Samus going to SR-388, the home world of the Metroids, and eradicating them so they couldn't be used by the space pirates. All except for one baby Metroid she runs into at the end of the game. This baby Metroid was then taken to a facility by Samus, where it was later attacked, and it was taken by Ridley back to planet Zebes, where again Samus defeats Mother Brain and Ridley, and the baby Metroid dies in the process of defending Samus from Mother Brain, which is where the game sort of deviates in terms of its lore. You have the 2D Metroids, and then you have the 3D Metroids. The 2D start with Metroid Fusion, which goes off on its own little tangent, which I won't get into. It's the Prime series that I more or less want to get into. The same one made by Retro Studios, the same company that made this game. Now, admittedly, the plot of Metroid Prime kind of is a rehash of Super Metroid in a sort of way. You start off on a facility, you go down to a planet, and you find a bunch of Metroids, and you end up killing a big Metroid at the end. But these Metroids were, in fact, duplicated from the DNA of the Metroid that was brought back to the facility in Super Metroid. Now, the events in Metroid Prime take place between Metroid 1 and 2, which is weird, but that's how they have it. So my issue here is that the Metroids have never, ever been used for mind control at all. Never even remotely established in any of the games that they can mind control anything. The Metroids are predatory creatures that hunt you down and quite literally suck the life force out of you. They don't chew you up and liquefy your insides, they suck the life out of you. They're kind of a weird space vampire. This whole entire thing where they mind control you came out of left field, and they pulled it out of their ass in a total disregard for established lore, and just so they could say Metroid, I guess. I'm not sure why they decided to go that route, but it doesn't fit with Metroids. It's dumb. And I'm going to emphasize that this is the same company that's been doing the Metroid Prime series since the 2000s, and this is what they did. They totally disregarded the lore for a throwaway line at the beginning of the game. This kind of establishes the quality of writing for this story of Metroid Prime 4. Now, let me touch on Silux here. This whole entire thing where he became the leader of the Space Pirates through mind control, which again, it's just dumb using Metroids. Silux was a bounty hunter who made his original appearance in Metroid Prime Hunters on the DS. And he had a brief cameo at the end of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, where he just follows Samus into space. I mean, that's it. I don't know why they're like, yeah, let's use this one character and turn him into the main antagonist of the Metroid Prime series. Alright, with that said, let's get into the game. So in terms of the game overall, I guess I would say disappointed is the best way to put it. It's not the worst thing I've played, but it's not the best. Now, I'm just going to sort of put a little bit of emphasis on this. The Metroid Prime series was a deviation from the 2D series. They're two totally different animals. Yes, there's an exploration aspect to both of them, but more exploration was emphasized on the Prime series versus that of, let's say, the 2D games that they have out there. So it's going to be a slower paced game. They usually are. So if you're looking for something fast paced in terms of combat, you're not going to find it here, at least not with Metroid in a first person setting. So let's start with Samus responding to the SOS attack on the research facility. The Space Pirates are clashing with the Federation troops on a research facility. Right, nothing wrong there. They actually had conflicts back in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, where they had the Federation versus the Space Pirates. Nothing new. All well and good, and they at least got rid of the arm cannons on the Federation troops and gave them actual rifles. It's a hectic scene, busy, and kind of on a misleading side, making you think this might be a little bit more of an action-oriented version of Prime. It's not. It slows way down after this introductory bit of gameplay here. So I'm very familiar with the Metroid Prime series, and one of the things they have is scanning things. And I wasted no time looking at things to scan, figuring they might do something similar that they'd had in the past where you need to scan certain things. So I was just scanning everything. But this game goes to an obnoxious level in terms of things you can scan. And at this point in time, there are actually things you can miss if you want to reach that 100% scan rate in terms of accomplishing bits of the game, which is necessary for 100%ing the game. Personally, there's just way too much. A lot of it was just pointless garbage to scan. There was no point. Like the barriers. Why would I scan the barriers? Who needs to scan the goddamn barriers? I don't know why they wasted their time actually setting up a way to scan it and then adding text to it. It made zero sense. It was just a throwaway little piece of mesh and textures. Yeah, it's cover. We can see it's cover. The problem is, it's indicative of the whole entire game, and until later in the game, I was scanning everything. I spent an obnoxious amount of time in this game scanning stupid stuff that didn't matter for the completion of the game. Most of it I didn't even pay attention to. It wasn't even noteworthy. Like I said, a lot of stuff just doesn't need to be scannable, but for whatever reason, they have a ton of stuff in this game that is scannable for no reason other than just what's make it scannable. One of the issues I have with this game, at least at the beginning, is that you get to fight the Space Pirates, but this is the only time you fight them. They disappear after this point in time, even though you see them everywhere at the beginning of the game. I mean, they're in the cutscene, they're everywhere on the ground when you come in and you start shooting them and helping out the Federation troops. And events later in the game just don't make sense to me. Remember that line at the beginning of the game where they said they had Metroids coming in and mind controlling the space pirates? Which doesn't make sense because all these other space pirates clearly aren't being controlled by Metroids, so they technically aren't controlling them? Or how does that work? Like I said, they altered the lore because reasons, and changed how the Metroids actually function instead of just being life force sucking animals that don't care what they suck the life force out of. I mean, that was firmly established in the other games that they just do not care. They will eat anything, space pirate creature that comes in their territory. They will eat you and suck at your life. Now they're just parasites that enter into the bodies of the space pirates or whatever living organisms. The total disregard and just retconning of how they function is just abhorrent to me. That they would just change it. I don't know, maybe because they thought they were a talented writer. I don't know. It just feels like a complete total disregard of what came before and something that's been well established because they thought it was a neat idea. And again, this particular bit doesn't really make sense and isn't even necessary for part of the game, but it becomes a very integral part of fighting bosses in the game. I mean, to be honest, they didn't even have to add the Metroids in there. It's like they added the Metroids for the sake of having Metroids. And you just have to look at Metroid Prime 2 and 3. They didn't have Metroids. Or they made a very limited appearance. It's been a while since I've played this, so I really can't remember. But another part that just doesn't make sense with this just opening cutscene is when Silax appears. And he has a bunch of space pirates and he has the Metroids with him, just hanging out. The very same creatures that just devour anything that's living. No explanation of how he gained control of them and how he's keeping them from eating everything in sight. Other than the writers were just super lazy and totally disregarded every bit of lore there is in the game. Now, I also might add that you can see all the space pirates and all the Federation troops right there, and they're in proximity of this big old, I don't know, burst of energy, which turns out to be a teleportation, which takes them to the planet the game takes place on, which is on Viros, somewhere way, way far away, way beyond their current position in the galaxy. And they don't bring the space pirates with them. They bring Federation troops with them. Silax goes with them. And somehow Metroids go with them as well. But zero space pirates. Personally, it doesn't make sense, but alright. So, this starts you off in Chrono Tower, which establishes the gimmick for this game, which is psychic abilities. These psychic abilities are nothing special. They are literally just duplicates of abilities that she already had when you started the game, / abilities that you had in previous Metroid Prime games. Nothing special there. They put a lot of emphasis on using these psychic abilities, and it rarely plays out any differently than any other Metroid Prime game, except for one aspect here or there. Like the saddest part of these whole entire psychic abilities, most of it's just used to open doors, which is just adding an unnecessary extra step to just opening the door. You have to slide this lock into place just so you can shoot it and open it. That's pretty much how it manifests. Otherwise, it's just, like I said, basic abilities that you've seen in every other Metroid game, like a tether that allows you to swing from different locations, super missiles, bombs and stuff like that. Nothing special. They actually kind of got really lazy again in terms of, let's say, writing and, let's just say, their naming conventions for these abilities. Here, let's just take a look. If we go into Samus and we look at all the things, it literally just says psychic in front of everything. Well, almost everything. Any ability that you actively use in the game just has the word psychic in front of it. I mean, it's just the laziness of whatever they were doing in this game is just mind-boggling. I googled psychic abilities just to sort of be like, I think I could come up with better names for some of these suit parts. So, for instance, you get a pair of boots that allow you to jump on the platforms that you can manifest with the psychic energy of the stone that gets implanted in Samus's head. And they literally just call them psychic boots, as you saw. I just googled psychic ability lists. Get a very basic list, which I guess it can be a little bit more complicated. But immediately I just thought of levitation boots, because as far as you're concerned, or everybody else who can't see Samus using the psychic abilities, she's levitating. Let's just call them levitation boots. The gloves that you get that allow you to manipulate the little door controls and stuff like that. Telekinesis gloves. How hard is it to just add the most basic form of creativity to your naming conventions? And that's just two items. I could come up with other names for other abilities other than just adding the word psychic in front of them. And it gets a little bit worse because you have the ability to fire ice, electricity, and fire shots. They literally just call them shots. You get these abilities by finding chips, like little microchips throughout the game. Mackenzie, the engineer that somehow made it into Viros, then uses that technology and gives Samus a elemental shot, in this case electricity. And there's fire, ice, and electricity. And it's just a complete and total wasted opportunity, considering there are psychic powers associated with fire, pyrokinesis, water manipulation, which hydronesis maybe, and then electrokinesis, literal abilities known to be associated with psychic abilities. I mean, it's not the first game that's had psychic abilities. They're all over the place. But for whatever reason, I keep thinking of Psychonauts as an example of things where they used different psychic abilities and gave them names unique to it instead of just adding the word psychic to a piece of armor. I mean, I know they're far away from their galaxy, and usually Samus gets a lot of her technology from planets that just so happen to have Chozo ruins on them, or some other civilization that's magically compatible with her suit. But this just feels exceptionally lazy. I mean, it gets a little bit worse because they also have you teleport objects back to their camp. And teleportation is a psychic ability, but they have you use it via a device. It just baffles me. Alright, well, I have zero structure to this video because I'm just ranting, but that's fine. Let's talk about the controls of the game. I have zero structure to this video, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of ranting, and a lot of this just overlaps, so I have no idea where to start because they introduce new things as they go along. So let's just talk about the controls. So, when Metroid Prime Remastered came out, they redid the controls, and for the better. Now they let you use the Joy-Con to aim with the motion controls, similar to the Wii version of Metroid Prime. But they made a very solid Pro controller scheme that worked out just fine. This, for whatever bizarre reason they decided to go with, uses a similar control scheme. Not quite the same, but similar. And a part of that is they wanted those mouse controls. They were emphasizing it. And I tried everything from just the Joy-Con to the Joy-Con mouse to the Pro controller. I found the mouse to be funky. It felt wrong to use it, and it doesn't feel as responsive as just using the regular motion controls. I mean, if you're just going to do mouse controls, let me use an actual mouse at that point in time. And unfortunately, it had the effect of taking away functionality from two buttons on the Pro controller, regardless of the fact that you could choose to use a Pro controller. Why they didn't program a specific function or usage of the Pro controller into the game and just did a general control scheme for everything, assuming that you would use the Joy-Cons, is beyond me. Now, my main problem is the return to motion controls. I absolutely despise them. I use them for a good chunk of the game, thinking that I might actually need them. The problem is I came to that conclusion based off of one little itty-bitty part at the very beginning of the game. It's the part where you had to scan the door, then aim at very specific spots on the door in order to shoot the spots to get it to open. I thought this was going to be something prevalent throughout the game since they put such emphasis on using mouse controls that I need to be able to respond faster. And it was very slow and awkward to use the analog stick. I mean, it looks worse on the screen right now because for whatever reason my capture card's like, I'm going to capture things at 20 frames a second. Don't know why at that particular point. But it was awkward, so I switched to the motion controls using the Joy-Con. But I found myself constantly missing, even with the lock-on ability, because I would just slightly fidget or something like that. So I ended up going back to the Pro controller to keep myself from doing that and having to stabilize my hands on top of the pillow I use to have my cats sit with me when I play games. Unbeknownst to me, even after turning off the motion controls, there's a second bit of motion controls you have to turn off because it still takes in the movement of the controller for aiming. So I was constantly missing because I would just slightly shift and it would cause the reticle to leave whatever I was targeting. Don't know why they just didn't include that with the part that says turn off motion controls, but they did, so you have to turn it off in two different places. After that, it plays just like Metroid Prime Remastered, more or less. You still lose some functionality because the right Z trigger and A button do the shooting. Whatever. Slightly irritating that I couldn't use that for a different purpose altogether, but it just irritated me to no ends to have my reticle just absolutely change direction because I fidgeted just a little bit while playing the game. And then there's the control layout. They say you can customize it. For the most part, yes. There's one thing that drove me up the wall that I kept doing just out of, I guess, habit of every other game out there in the world. And that's hitting the plus or start button to go into menus. No, it doesn't work that way. The damn plus button in this game summons Viola, the motorcycle, which you can only use out in the Soul Valley, which actually isn't a valley, it's more of a plain out in the middle of a desert, but whatever. So in order to bring up the menu, you have to hit the minus button. I don't know why they went with different conventions and just didn't have the menus on start and have Viola with the minus, but you can't change it. They won't let you. It drove me up the wall because I kept summoning Viola or getting off of it while trying to get into the menus out of just pure habit of that being the button to push for menus. Yes, sometimes the minus button can also be used for a different set of menus. It just depends on the game. But primarily, the main set of menus are on the plus button. So I was going absolutely nuts, and I absolutely hate that would not let me change that no matter what I did. It's the one button you cannot reassign. You can reassign the menu button, but you cannot reassign that plus button for whatever reason. Let's talk about controlling Viola. So Viola is the motorcycle that you get that allows you to move from point A to point B faster in certain parts of the level, mainly Soul Valley. Now, what you just saw, every time you want to transition to certain parts of the world map, well, not every part, but there are parts where you have to get on those platforms and you have to rev the engine until it gets to a certain point. Why they just didn't make it so that you had a ramp that you would drive up, I don't know, maybe it's a hidden load screen, I don't know. I would have preferred a load screen than having to sit there and rev the engine until it let me go. Now, in terms of controlling the motorcycle, for the most part, it's fluid as long as you don't want to actually fight things. I say that kind of tentatively. See, the problem with the combat on Viola here is that these units that they have throughout the desert, they start out light, having a few things here or there, and then eventually ramp it up, and you have to hold the A button to lock on. You use like a psychic disc that shoots out. Now, the issue is you have to steer with the left analog stick, and you shoot with the A button, but in order to lock on, you have to rotate the camera, which uses the right analog stick. It doesn't use the trigger, it uses the A button. It would have been a lot better if you could use the A button. I might have been able to remap that, I don't know, because there are actual separate controls for Viola. Which, in that case, that's my bad, but... So you have to awkwardly try and rotate the camera to lock onto targets and not hit anything in order to fight in the game. And when you get into later in the game, when it's more frequent to be attacked by whatever robots come after you, it gets a little on the irritating side to constantly have to rotate that camera to lock onto things. And if you are going too slow, said camera has a tendency to not be able to rotate faster than the vehicles flying around you. This may not be an apt comparison, but Red Dead Redemption 2 had the best third-person combat, mainly because, yes, they had an AI that actually controlled the horse partially, which helped. So it allowed you to freely rotate the camera and target whatever you wanted on the back of the horse. This just feels awkward to do combat, and they give you a couple of abilities like hitting B and then power sliding into it. Usually didn't happen because they maneuvered out of the way, even after hitting them. So I rarely used that ability. It was just utterly useless, except for maybe a boss fight out in the desert. So the combat and the bike is just not fun, it's not intuitive, it's awkward. And riding around on the bike is okay, it's entertaining enough, and I primarily use it to just gather a bunch of green crystals scattered throughout the map. And to be honest, I should probably touch on these green crystals. So they're a bit of a collectible in the game, and they are tied to suit advancements for the game. So when you get a certain amount, you can increase your blaster's ability to do damage, as well as make the shots travel faster, and it adds some functionality to the suit as you progress. Now, the problem I have with the green crystals is they're tied to the plot of the game, and not in a good way. So a bit of a spoiler here. So the race of beings, the Viras, named after the same planet, we're trying to bring harmony to the rest of the planet and providing a boon to their growth. And I mean the whole entire planet, not just them. So they were using green energy they found from those rocks to do it. And unfortunately had a bit of a side effect. See, it kind of turn them into what they call grievers in the game. It's the most common enemy that you will find throughout the whole entire game. And it was caused by direct exposure to the green energy that they sort of extracted from these green rocks, and here they are having you run around and collecting the same green rocks that permanently change them into monsters. And I apologize for the frame rate on there. For whatever reason, after I did a driver's update, Elgato Capture Utility just isn't agreeing with something somewhere with my hardware. It was a couple weeks ago, but for whatever reason, it's just like, nah, I don't want to work, and unfortunately, that's several hours into the game. Otherwise, I would just recapture said footage. Sorry. So the point of gathering the green stone rocks is to give it to this podium that then, I guess, transfers the energy to a tree, which is going to give you a fruit which contains all the knowledge of the Viros. So they can sort of live on in some shape or form, since they were all turned into monsters for all intents and purposes. And ideally, Samus would take said fruit and plant it somewhere, and they would live on in some shape or form. But the whole entire lack of logic here is that it mutated you into a monster. Who knows what's going to happen to somebody else who might be exposed to said green energy if it's not going to turn them into a monster. And here you are having them gather it in droves. And speaking of that green energy, outside of getting the fruit, you actually also get a new suit. The second new suit in the game. So, you get the two suits like I mentioned. The purpose of the first one is just to allow you to ride Viola, and there are no changes to this suit whatsoever, outside of getting the Legacy suit. The transformation from the Viola suit to the Legacy suit is literally just a menu popping up saying you got the suit. Now, this may have happened because I turned in a bunch of green crystals all at once, and it confused the hell out of the system, so it just didn't do the animation for it. Now, they did do a transition into the Viola suit, but that's it. After that, nothing changes outside of getting that Legacy suit, which is kind of a nitpick on my side that I'm going to go over, and that's whenever you get new gear in pretty much every Metroid since the Super Metroid, it causes a physical and noticeable change to the suit. Like when you get the boots, it changes your boots. What happens when you gather a new item or piece of gear in this game, or Metroid Prime 4? Absolutely nothing. Your armor glows purple for a second. So let's cover, I guess, the level design. In the first Metroid Prime, they had the terrain sort of loop around and connect with each other in various points. This game is exceptionally linear. It's more like a Legend of Zelda game than anything. The maps, the layout of the facilities you go into are fairly straightforward. Little to no deviation whatsoever. And then you have the Valley of Soul, which is just this open area with absolutely little to do except for fighting the obnoxious little robots that send after you and gathering green crystals. Yes, you have your bike and you could potentially just do some jumps, but that's only going to get you so far for so long. Which I guess brings me to the enemies of the game. There's actually a lack of variety of enemies in the game. There's very few, and they only make variations of said enemies. Most of the time you're fighting some kind of drone that the Viros have made. They have some differences in abilities, and are probably the enemies that have the most difference in terms of their attacks. So they have technically multiple types of grievers, but they all function the same. They come up to you and melee attack you, and then maybe occasionally spit on you. And when you go and get the final key of the game, it actually gets super obnoxious because you're in this mine, and they constantly come after you, which is part of the scenario, which only slightly ebbs once you end the scenario, because every time you make a loud explosion by using a missile or something like that, when you're just going through the mines trying to gather the items that you missed to expand your missiles, your uh, energy packs, your shots, it will cause these things to come out in droves, and it just gets super obnoxious. And I might add that there is one convention I wish they didn't keep from all the other Metroid games, is the constant respawning enemies once you leave an area and then just come back through. Like literally just going through a door and coming back will respawn them. I wish they would have like a spawn timer or something. Something different. And part of the reason why I kind of wish this in particular for Metroid Prime 4 is the enemies have a tendency to be a bit on the spongy side. They also hit like trucks, which there's nothing wrong with making the game more difficult, but when your difficulty is just having them take more damage, it just feels hollow and lazy. And unfortunately, that sponginess extends to the bosses as well. So the bosses take a lot of damage in order to bring them down. And in some cases, they add some very specific mechanics that they seem to have tried to combine. For instance, you might shoot a boss in a weak spot in order to stun it. This can either just be a spot that doesn't have armor, or it could be like the little glowy blue spots that you saw on the big old space pirate I showed earlier. That being Abarax. You had the big old blue spots that you had to shoot before you could do damage. That's a common thing with these bosses. Or you had to do some kind of mechanic to stun them in order to expose their weak spot, which just added on to the huge amount of health you had to drain. And it just felt like it was an obnoxious amount of time in order to down these bosses and kill them. Alright, let's talk about the Federation troops that do make it into the game. I know a lot of people keep pointing at Mackenzie, which that's literally just a few brief lines in the whole entire game. And he becomes more or less subdued and less annoying and cringy. It honestly wasn't that bad. It's actually worse in Metroid Other M, but that doesn't make that whole entire thing good by default. No, my biggest gripe was with this character, Armstrong.
While I was waiting, I was studying this hologram, and I just... Wow. Samus? It's really you. I don't even know what to say. Is this a new suit? It's amazing. I love it. I love it so
Private.
much. Yes, sir. Right. Sorry.
So from the moment you met her all the way up until the end of the scenario, which was getting out of the facility, she was just annoying. She constantly fangirled over Samus, and I just wanted it to stop. I wonder if somebody actually said something to whoever did the dialogue or the cutscenes, because they tone it way down to actually where she doesn't do it anymore. I mean, that happens with all the characters, but she was by far the most annoying. Her behavior was more indicative of somebody who met like a actor or a sports star or celebrity of some kind. I wouldn't consider Samus a celebrity, considering the situation and the fact that she kills a lot of things, and here's this woman trapped out in the middle of space just being all giddy and shit for no apparent reason. I mean, there's even this one cutscene where she just like steps in and magically knows how to use the terminal, and she's like, I'm gonna punch it! I mean, Samus was right next to the console, and she seemed to know what she was doing with it because they transferred all their knowledge into her brain via that crystal. But for whatever reason, this private just stepped up to the console. I'm gonna punch it. I mean, it made no sense. It's like they wanted to give her something to do. And if there's a self-insert character in anything, it's this character right here, Armstrong. I was kind of hoping she would die, to be honest. I don't know if she does, considering the ending of the game, but I was kind of hoping she would die sooner. So I guess I'm kind of circling back a little bit here. Let's talk about items. Because of the linear nature of the maps, it's actually extremely easy to find them just by accident, and then it's even easier once you get the ability to charge these scout bots, because they point them out for you on the map, and none of them are particularly challenging on figuring out how to actually get these items. And on my second playthrough, because I knew where they were, it was pretty easy to get some of them along the way, with a lot of them needing other equipment to come back and get them. So I just got to a certain point in the game where I had everything and just came back and got everything in one foul swoop. It was really easy and simple in comparison to the previous Metroid Prime games. Like, super easy. I mean, if you want some challenge on finding things, you're not gonna particularly like this game because it's literally they point them out to you. So it's not really that much of a challenge on finding all the items. Now, in terms of scanning, even though there's an obnoxious amount of scanning in the game, you actually only need a few things, with some of them being missable because you only encounter them once. Like the space pirates or Aberrax. And there's a boss or two that you also only encounter once. Which, on my first playthrough, I messed up and didn't scan some stupid little thing swimming through lava and had to start all over. But since I knew what I was doing, it took me like 10 hours less to get through the game. Let's talk about the big bad boss of the game. Well, not so much, because it's not like he was behind the scenes or anything like that. Silux. Like I mentioned, he was just in Metroid Prime Hunters and at the end of Metroid Prime 3... Corruption. Up until this game, he was just maybe a sort of member of Samus's Rogues Gallery from Metroid Prime Hunters. Really didn't have any involvement in the game, and him becoming the leader of the space pirates, along with being able to command the Metroids that can somehow magically change into more parasitic things that enhance and control enemies, is that came out of nowhere. Like, it doesn't make any sense. They're like, let's just pick a guy. And they chose Silux, whatever, I don't care. Spoilers, I guess? So, his motivations for hating Samus is she worked with the Federation. And in Metroid Prime Hunters, I might add, he just had a gun and transformed into a thing. And they greatly expanded on what he does by adding nanobots to the whole entire thing. And if you go into the tower when you leave, there's like one capsule that's closed. You're like, I wonder who could be in there. Oh no! They made it super obvious that he was going to come out. So I guess they gave him psychic powers as well, I think. I mean, he was in the little chamber that does that, so let's go with yes. So this fight was the worst because he's not only the spongiest, you now have to babysit the other Federation soldiers, which I didn't really go over. I mean, you have the Sergeant Duke. We already talked about Mackenzie. You have Armstrong. You have the sniper Tokabi. I actually like him the most. He was alright. Sarge was okay as well. Bit of a stereotype having a black sergeant, though. So the unfortunate part is they also take damage in this fight because they help you out in it. Kind of out of nowhere and slightly annoying because they easily go down depending on what difficulty you're on. Which means you have to heal them, and if you don't heal them, they can die and cause an in-game fail state, which only happened once with Armstrong. I mean, I didn't let it happen on purpose, but it was kind of funny. But yes, they required constant healing, particularly when you get to the last phase before you get him down to 50% because he uses a bunch of lightning and he strikes all of them down at multiple times. So you're, instead of attacking them, you're picking up these damn federal troops and you're making the fight last longer because they aren't dodging all the fun stuff coming at them. So after that fourth phase, you go into this weird sort of warp tunnel that Psylocke knocks Samus into, and you float around the tube trying to dodge stuff that he sends your way. There's a bit of an issue with it, particularly when he sends these two bars at you and you have no means of actually really controlling how to get through those. You can't speed up and or slow down, at least not that I found out. I might have just not pushed enough buttons or enough directions, but you're almost always going to get hit by that, and I'm like, okay. I mean, the depth perception in this game is a bit iffy at times as well, I might add. And then he takes you to this arena just out in space, I think. I'm not entirely sure. And you have your last little bit of a fight with him here. And again, he's a bit of a damage sponge. Kind of annoying. On top of that, he has a move or two that I could not figure out if you could even dodge it, because I tried doing the whole dash thing. It didn't seem to work every time. Like that one move that you just saw with the beam coming towards Samus, could not dodge it for the life of me. And then he'll turn into this thing called Lockjaw, which is, I guess, the equivalent of his Morph Ball, and he will almost always hit you. Not always, but almost always. And it took me a while to figure out, in order to get these energy tanks he steals back, I have to be in my Morph Ball, but also to get them back from him after he takes them, you have to bump into him like a demolition derby, or just more like bumper cars in this case. No explanation of that, even when you scan them, that you need to bump into them using your Morph Ball. They just change the mechanics without telling you. So after dragging the fight on, and you finally get him to his last bit of health, he sort of just staggers and falls backwards into space, which doesn't make any sense because it's space, or it looked like space. I don't know. It was confusing where you were. And after that, you get attacked by him. He damages the teleporter. And all the federal troops go, and for some odd reason, they're like, yeah, Samus, go, instead of letting her be the hero and staying with them and maybe finding a way to repair the teleporter. They're like, nah, you just go, and Samus goes. And you have to go. You have to physically push the button in order to move on with the cutscene. The first time I did it, which kind of irritated the hell out of me because I had to fight Psylocke again, I didn't hit the button to see what would happen, and it goes to a game over screen. I mean, there's no real choice in it, so why did they make you hit a button in order to end the game and get to the cutscene? So yeah, Samus leaves them behind, and you get this cutscene at the end after the credits, where she digs a hole and she buries the fruit from all the green crystals, you know, the ones that mutated the Viola into monsters, and plants it. Her armor goes back to its Varia suit variant, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. And they dislodge the crystal from her head that gives her her psychic powers. Now, if you collect everything and scan everything, you get the ending where you get to see her face. Otherwise, she doesn't remove the helmet. Which I guess is okay. Tying it to scan and item progression in comparison to trying to beat it as fast as you can. I wouldn't really say that Metroid Prime 1 is indicative of getting that game done fast. You can, and you get rewarded by seeing her in her Zero suit. This, they just tie it to scan progression. You see her face, which I guess is fine. I mean, I'm not saying I need to see her in a tight skin outfit. I just don't like being rushed when I play games, so I'm not a fan of the speedrunning aspect of it to see a secret ending. And you get one other goodie for scanning everything, getting 100%, which is a short little video, a complete video of all the flashes that you get throughout the game, which I didn't mention because they weren't really all that important. I guess establishing Lux's animosity towards Samus. I mean, the only thing I learned from this is that he's kind of an asshole and a garbage commander, but whatever. I mean, he gets his men killed trying to capture a weapon, and I guess his animosity comes from Samus blowing up said weapon. I really don't know. I'm not entirely sure I should be interpreting this or even how to interpret this. I mean, he's angry at Samus for coming in and destroying the weapon that just absolutely wiped out his troops, which they told him to hold back. So that wouldn't happen, but he did it anyways. And becomes angry at Samus for blowing it up, even though the troops he needed to capture were dead because they used it on. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's a fancy cutscene, I'll give it that. Alright. So, between the very linear level design, poorly thought out story, clearly thought out, where they just altered lore because they wanted to or could, along with the weird leaps in logic, particularly the green crystals that could potentially mutate somebody into a monster. The somewhat bland gameplay, particularly due to the lack of enemies in combination with the sponginess of said enemies. This game was not what I expected for sure, and I'm not gonna lie, yes, it's kind of disappointing. It's not the worst thing I played, but it's just not good, and I'm not entirely sure how or why I forced myself to play through it a second time. I mean, it's one of those titles I definitely wanted to be better, and unfortunately it wasn't. So I'm pretty sure the future of the Metroid series is going to be in its 2D outings. I mean, this one may do well, just by sheer fact that there's more people out there buying video games than when the first Metroid Prime came out. Who knows? But no, I cannot recommend this game. It's kind of bland, kind of irritating at parts. It feels very empty. I know they wanted to emphasize the exploration in Metroid Prime games, but I think this took it in a direction where it was just kind of boring at times. So I will give some alternate recommendations, with Christmas coming up and all that other fun stuff. Now, some of these are going to be a bit of an ask, let's just get that out of the way. But first, we'll start off with games that are on the Switch currently and are easily purchased. That being Metroid Prime and Metroid Dread. Metroid Prime feels better, it plays a little bit better. You're still going to run into some of the issues that I didn't particularly like about this one, like the constantly respawning enemies, which, yes, it was a product of its time. But the remastered version control scheme makes the gameplay a lot better. If you don't want to buy a brand new version of that, try and find it used, or I wouldn't recommend it, you could try the GameCube and the Wii versions of the game. Like I said, I don't recommend it though. Particularly due to the stiffness of the GameCube version. And the Wii version, you'll find yourself missing a lot due to the weird nature of the Wiimote, and it actually can detect small variations in movement, which causes you to miss a lot, making the game a little bit more frustrating than it needs to be or should be, even with the lock-on. The next Metroid recommendation is a bit iffy. Not because it's a bad game. No, this is a good game, but getting your hands on a copy is a whole different matter. I mean, I did find it on Amazon, and you could probably find it on eBay as well. And the price varies depending on the person and where you get it from. I'm seeing like $20 all the way up to $52 from Target. But it's a good game. I guess the only issue would be getting the hardware to play it. Now, my last few recommendations are the even bigger ask to some degree. So that being Metroid Fusion, which even a decent physical copy is gonna run you up around $70. If you get it from DK Oldies, they think it's like worth $130, and so screw DK Oldies, don't buy it from them. I mean, they're a bit of a scam to begin with, but whatever. I don't have a physical copy of Metroid Zero Mission, but I would go with that as well. That is a fun title. Jump puzzles are a bit of a headache, but other than that, it's a pretty good title. And you can't go wrong with the original Metroid. And then again, if you actually want to play it on original hardware, that's going to cost a pretty penny. You might as well just get a subscription and play it on the Nintendo Virtual Console at that point. Or if you can get a hold of the mini console, that's actually a good option too, especially because you get a bunch of pretty good games on that as well. That's up to you. Anyways, I'm done with this. Between the technical issues that I've had with it recording, my mic stand snapping so it's in an awkward position away from my face. Hopefully it'll pick up without any issues. I'm done with this game. I can't recommend it, but that's up to you if you want to try it. Anyways, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Have a good one.